It's just 6 o'clock, so I think we'll get started, and we'll probably have people joining us as we go along. So this is my first webinar, so I want everyone to be patient with me. The and hopefully everyone can see the screen. And so the first thing I want to do again is welcome everyone to the Making Our Schools Seizure Safe webinar. This is a copy of the banner we've been taking around to events with us. And the goal of tonight's webinar is really to inform and engage you folks, our advocates, about the need for a legislative fix that will help countless kids living with epilepsy in schools throughout Massachusetts. We cover 4 states here, the Epilepsy Foundation New England, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, and Maine. And we have started this process. The first piece of legislation has been filed in Massachusetts, and we'll just start to go through the legislative process here in Massachusetts in the very, very near future. And our intent is next year to file legislation early January when the legislative sessions begin in the other 3 states. So again, our goal is to just inform and engage our advocates who are joining us today. Hopefully I'm going to do the least amount of talking, and I want to just do a quick introduction of who's going to be joining me. Obviously, myself. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Public Policy here at the Foundation. Colleen Kelly from Massachusetts, was a 2019 Speak Up Ambassador for our affiliate down in DC, and she's a member of our local Young Leaders Network. And I'm really pleased to have with us Lindsay Crunk and her mom, Cindy. Kentucky was the first state in the country to pass a Seizure Safe School Act, and it's actually called the Lindsay Crunk Act in honor of Lindsay's commitment to her work and her family's work on getting this bill passed. So I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay and Cindy in short time because they have a fascinating story, and they will share their journey with us also of how they got this bill passed in Kentucky. A couple things as we go along. As I mentioned, this is my first webinar, so hopefully everybody will be patient with me. And I want to thank Sarah Robinson for her help. Sarah's our field service manager, director, and she's my go-to person for anything technology-wise. So I just want to thank her. Everyone in attendance is on mute. And the reason for that is oftentimes when we have a large group of people, there's quite a bit of background noise. But we also anticipate that people will have questions, and hopefully you'll see on your screen a box where you can type in your questions and they will come to me and our panel, and we'll do our best to answer all your questions. There's also a raised hand symbol on your screen, and folks can raise their hand if they have something that they want to add to this discussion at any point. So again, you're on mute, but you will have the opportunity to answer questions and share your input. We do have a full agenda, and I'm going to try my best to actually do even a couple simple polls during our webinar. So what we hope to cover tonight is, what is the Seizure Safe School Act? Why is it needed? What does it say and do? And then I'm going to turn it over to Lindy and Cindy to share with us what I'm just referring to as the Kentucky story, the Kentucky success. What we need to do here in Massachusetts and our other states to move this piece of legislation along. We want to hear what ideas and suggestions you may have, and then start off with a couple simple next steps to help us reach our goal to get this legislation passed. So what is the Seizure Safe School Act? Currently, there is a bill here in Massachusetts that will make our schools seizure safe and seizure smart. the bill, currently known as House Docket 3251. It was filed by Representative Shauna O'Connell from the Taunton area. Representative O'Connell is in the minority in the House. She's a Republican, and but the bill currently has bipartisan support with 19 co-sponsors. And amongst those 19 co-sponsors, we have good representation from both the majority party of Democrats and the minority party of Republicans. So we're off to a good start with 19 co-sponsors.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we were, and actually the bill hasn't even been signed to a committee yet. So what will happen next is this docket will actually get a bill number and assigned to a committee, and then when our real work will start then. So why is it needed? You know, there's 71,600, but close to 72,000 people living with epilepsy in Massachusetts. And more than 8,700 of these are young people of school age. And, you know, they have the right to be assured that their seizures are going to be dealt with safely and appropriately. And, you know, we also need, through this legislation, to increase epilepsy awareness, while at the same time reducing the stigma too often associated with epilepsy and seizure disorders. You know, in my job as Director of Advocacy and Public Policy, I spend a lot of time up at the State House, and I can give them reams of information and data till they get glossy-eyed. What really makes the difference and what really convinced them as to why this bill is needed is hearing from advocates such as yourself and hearing personal stories. And I've asked Colleen to share with us the story she shared with our legislators in DC, because I think what Colleen experienced in school really points out the need for why this legislation is needed. So I'm going to turn it over to Colleen to just briefly share with us what she shared with our legislators in DC. And you'll see Colleen and her dog Buddy there on the screen. So Colleen, I'm going to just have you take it away.
Okay. Hi, my name's Colleen. I got diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 12. I was having them, they think, for multiple years before as absent seizures. And I got truly diagnosed when I had my first grand mal. After that, when I went into middle school, I was in the classrooms, and they didn't quite think, when my grand mal got more severe and more frequent, my school thought it was a disruption to everyone else in the school. So I was taken out of my main classrooms and put into kind of like my own classroom with maybe another student. And at that point, I was still able to eat lunch in the lunchroom with my friends, which was at that point, which to me was amazing. But then, like, I think it was near the end of 6th grade, I had my first grand mal in the lunchroom. And apparently then they had said that it was too much of a disruption and a scare to other students, that I was then had to eat lunch in the nurse's office every day or someone else's classroom, just to keep me from, the way they would say it, distracting or scaring other students that don't know what's going on, when they easily could have just kind of explained to everyone what was going on. But so I spent basically from 6th grade till my junior year of high school completely segregated from all of my friends and classmates and everyone else. And I ended up, when I went to my junior year of high school, I did my junior year, and basically it was like the end of junior year and then going into the summer, my school basically said that they just didn't know what to do anymore. They couldn't handle the amount of seizures I was having and the type of seizures I was having. So they told my parents it would be best if they didn't send me back for my senior year. And I didn't. So my parents thought it would be best not to send me back for my senior year, because the school obviously didn't want me back, but it was really only because they couldn't handle my seizures throughout the years.
Oh my goodness.
Colleen, every time I hear this story, it just tears me apart. And I want to thank you for sharing it with the others, because I think your story, more than any of the data I can talk about, points out the need for why we need a bill like this. I just feel so badly thinking of the isolation that you must have experienced, and the impact not just on your education, but just on your social well-being. It's really a sad situation. um, what comes to my mind as a public policy person is, was this even legal what they were doing? But that's another whole webinar. Um, but I want to again thank you for your bravery and for sharing it. You're sharing this, I know, made a difference down in DC, and it will here in Massachusetts and other states also. So as I mentioned, um, there's my first blunder. Okay. So this piece of legislation, what does it say and what does it do? So this bill would require school personnel to complete a seizure recognition and first aid response training. Hopefully, after having that kind of training, it would prevent situations like Colleen went through, because they'd be able to recognize and deal with a seizure appropriately. Um, the program would be a program. It's a 1-hour program that teachers and school personnel can take online. They can take it anytime, any place. It's a 1-hour program, and so sort of the incentive for that also is that they would get 1 hour of continuing education credits that were certified by the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control. The second part, it would require that a seizure action plan is made part of any student's file and made available to school personnel who work with this student. And a seizure action plan is basically an outline of what type of seizures this student has, what would happen if he or she had a seizure, what the best appropriate response is during a seizure. In the unlikely event that it turned into an emergency situation, what's the best type of emergency response? So all that information would be in one place and follow the student. And the last part of our bill would ensure that any FDA approved medication, so any anti-epileptic drugs that their doctor prescribed, if it needed to be administered during school time, that it would be administered to the student. So those are the three main components of what this bill says. So we're standing on the shoulders of the folks in Kentucky. This slide here shows on the left is Cindy, Lindsay's mom. There in between the two gentlemen is Lindsay herself, who was in the past a Teen Speak Up participant and came back this year as an ambassador. And her dad is on the left, or I'm sorry, on the right. And they're standing with, is that Rand Paul, your senator?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so they hang out with good company. So
That's right.
so I'm gonna turn it over so Cindy and Lindsay can tell us the story of how they got to this point where they're standing with the governor signing the Lindsay Kruk Act in Kentucky, and how that act then made the press and how it became a law in Kentucky. So I'm just gonna turn it over to you folks.
Okay, here's Lindsay. Oh, well, here, let me tell how we kind of started. Lindsay was diagnosed. Hello, everybody. And Colleen, I have to say that I admire your strength and your dedication to, talk about your story. And it has touched me. I can't believe that, and I'm not sure how many years ago that was, but we're in the 21st century. And for that to have happened to you, it just brings me to tears that would even happen to you in this day and age. So
Thank you.
you are a true warrior. And I was wondering if this law in Massachusetts Can it be named after you? That's what I'm thinking, Bill. I'm just putting that out there, Bill, okay?
Um, there has been much discussion about that, and we're in discussion with Representative O'Donnell.
Okay.
And right now it's what's called in docket form, and once the language is posted, that would be the time. And Representative O'Donnell is aware of Colleen's story, but she's also aware of many stories at this point. So that decision hasn't been made, but it's a very worthwhile suggestion.
Okay. I just wanted to put that out there, just in
Rightfully
case.
so. Rightfully so.
Okay. Well, Lindsay, she's 17 now. She was diagnosed with juvenile myoclonic epilepsy when she was 12 years old, that'll be 5 years this August. She had been experiencing twitches and jerks and some eye movement. And she had told me this like off and on. She was just saying she was twitching and jerking. Well, at the time, I'm thinking, okay, it's her hormones. I'm like, oh, it's just her hormones. Because I had no idea that twitching and jerking can be seizure activity. Because back then I wasn't educated on epilepsy. So we went to the pediatrician. The pediatrician sounded pretty alarmed by her symptom. She sent us to UK hospital right away, like that day. And it confirmed, they did an EEG, a 24-hour EEG, and that confirmed her diagnosis. So she was put on a Capra, and she did fine on it. That was in August of 2014. March 1st of 2015, she had her first grand mal seizure in the shower. And I had never experienced that, and neither had she or her dad. I mean, we were just in shock. I didn't know if my daughter was going to live or die that day, to be honest with you. So from there, med changes, all of that. She was afraid to go to school. We went and talked to the school, and her particular middle school, they did touch on some of the training, but it wasn't required. And when they told me that, Lindsay was already, being a teenage girl, there's already so much going on anyway. But throwing epilepsy in the mix, it just made her uneasy. It made me as a parent, sending her to school, not knowing if she was in the right classroom, if that teacher was going to know what to do, or so that kind of it scared me. So I was like, this can't be. So we wanted to start, in our district, but then it was just like, no. Lindsay was like, Mom, no, we need to do more. It needs to be statewide. So we had gotten involved with the Epilepsy Foundation of Kentuckiana. And from there, that's where we found our voice. We had a platform, and Lindsay became a Teen Speak Up representative. And Seizure Smart School, that's when it became her platform for the Teen Speak Up. So we worked on it for I want to say 2 years, but it was signed into law last April of 2018, thankfully. But all I can, and I'll let Lindsay talk.
Yeah.
I'm talking too much now, Bill.
Never enough.
Well, hi, first of all. And then I don't know. I guess my mom pretty much covered it all, but
Why,
I
why is
mean,
it important?
it's important. The law is pretty much really important to me because I mean, it's important for kids to get educated on that type of stuff and for teachers to get educated on that type of stuff because you never know when someone is going to have a seizure right in front of you. And I mean, they'll be educated on that and they could save their life.
Lindsay, this is Bill. What were the, you came up with this tremendous idea. What were the first steps that you took?
Well, we talked to the Epilepsy Foundation and then we talked to our representatives, Representative Mark Hart, which was he's actually a very nice guy because he's a
retired EMT.
yes, which that's a big plus. And his wife is a teacher, so I mean it was kind of like it fit right in to our situation.
And right, and I know you worked with Deb quite a bit on this. When you went to the foundation, what was their response, and how did they help you? Your local affiliate in Kentucky.
They were all in, Bill. They were like, "Oh yeah, we're in. Whatever we need to do this." And we got Karen Lentz, the lobbyist that works for the foundation. She was very instrumental in the process.
She basically helped me out through the whole like law making process. I don't know.
Right. It's like making sausage.
Thing.
I know there's a lot of steps to it.
It's like I don't know.
And so now your representative sponsored the bill, and you went to the foundation, and you and your family. So what was the first thing did you spend a lot of time at the State House? Did you have to do a lot of visits and education?
Yes.
Yeah, and remember you testified in front of the education committee. It had to come out of education committee first. It came out of education committee first, and then went to the House. So she did testify in front of the education committee, and we went. There was several times that we went for Epilepsy Education Day, and we followed up with several of our, several of the representatives, and got on social media, and we did a whole lot. I mean, we were there a whole lot.
So it took more than one meeting.
Yes.
For this to happen. Right.
Yes.
How about opposition? Did you face any opposition, or were you aware of opposition? Like, did the School Nurse Association or the Teachers Association or anybody have any concerns about it?
Yes, the school, I think there was, or the Kentucky Education Association. In our original bill, we had the student piece in our bill, which we wanted students to be included on the education part, and they fought us on that. So we did not get that in our legislation, but that doesn't mean that we're not going back and getting that, because we are going to go back and get that.
Right.
So yes.
And I asked that question because every bill, even though so many of these bills seem like just common sense, the reality is there's always opposition to every bill. There's both sides to it. And, as long as we're prepared, and it's stories like Lindsay's and stories like Colleen, again, that oftentimes help people change their mind, and it's
Absolutely.
the convincing factor. Um, so that question, how the foundation helped, I know you worked very closely. That came from one of our participants. So thanks for that question. Again, if anybody else has any questions, just type them in the question box and I'll get them and we'll do our best to answer them. So Lindsay, how did it feel having a bill passed in your name?
It was like really weird, and it was just kind of just
Surreal.
yeah, it was just very, I don't know. When I saw my name on a bill, it was just like, what? This is really weird.
Right. Well, it's
I mean,
It's
it's
a
good.
weird
It's a good
good.
weird.
it's well deserved. You know, in closing, what advice or words of encouragement would you have for our advocates, especially our young leaders and our teens? And what words of advice and encouragement would you have?
Don't be afraid to just speak up and speak your mind and like tell your story.
Right.
Because you can put a face with your story. I think that is the key to our success because Lindsay was there every time we went. She was there and she told her story. She may have told it 100 times, maybe more than that. But putting a face with a story, and that is so empowering, and it really gets people thinking because they see this young lady and the struggles, whatever struggles she went through with school, and they were compassionate, and I just cannot emphasize that enough.
Right.
Tell your
Well, I
story.
know the slide you sent me, Cindy, had some, sort of step by step, and that's showing on the screen right now. And just to summarize it, finding people who are willing to speak up and share their story. Search for legislators and sponsors to help support it. Meeting with your state reps. Working with the affiliate. I'm here and other folks from the foundation are here to help guide people and ask questions the whole step of the way. And it's actually about keeping in contact and forming a relationship with your legislators. They expect it, they want it, and they do listen.
Yes, they do. They
Again,
really do.
here's a great picture of Lindsay celebrating the signing of the bill. So again,
Yes.
congratulations, well deserved.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
So what do we need to do here to get this bill passed? Quite simply, as it's been said already, legislators need to hear from people across Massachusetts as to the problems students with epilepsy experience in school, and how the bill will help and why we need their support. It's basically a simple matter of sharing your story and asking. And we want to hear good too. I mean, some schools are doing a good job. The purpose of this legislation is to have uniformity across the state. We've
Yes.
heard unfortunate stories where someone's in a school and the school is dealing with their epilepsy very appropriately. They move or change schools and it ends up being a disaster situation. So we want some consistency across the state. But again, there's good out there, and we want to recognize that and help to bring that up as perhaps best practices as to what schools should doing, so that legislators will hear the real impact of having epilepsy and going to school.
Right. And I,
So
and I think too, Bill, that you know, getting this legislation in Massachusetts, I mean nationwide, it should be nationwide, but it's creating a dialogue about epilepsy. So, and it's starting in the schools. So, what better place to start than in our education system?
Right, right. And it would be great if it was a federal law, but education is one of the state issues. So this is why we have to do it
Right.
uh, in each of the 50 states. And I know a number of affiliates have worked on this following your lead and your model. Texas, the SAMS Act was passed in
Yeah.
Texas. And again, it only happened because of advocates willing to do this. Um, so what people on the line, what can they do? Um, I sort of put a menu here of some of the things you could consider doing. One is simply sharing your story with the Epilepsy Foundation New England. And what I mean by that is not to give anybody homework or more work, but if you had an opportunity to write a one-pager um, talking about your epilepsy, when you were diagnosed, the type of seizures you have, what kinds of treatment you're having for your epilepsy, um, and then how your school has handled it, both good or bad. And you'll get my contact information at the end. But just a willingness to share your story will go a long, long way. We can keep your stories confidential, or if you wanted to include your name and address, it's very helpful because then we can target it to your specific legislator so that they're hearing from someone in their district and they pay even closer attention to that. So if you're willing to share your story with the Epilepsy Foundation, please just send them directly to me. Then think about this. Would you be willing to email your legislator? Would you be willing to call your legislator? Would you be willing to write to your legislator? And even more importantly, would you be willing to visit your legislator in the district office or at the state capitol if we went as a group? If some folks have expressed a willingness, they'll do all of those. Some are more comfortable just doing one or two. We want you to always be comfortable with what you're doing. But again, the most important thing is that your legislators hear from you. And you don't have to do this on your own. I didn't want to put anybody on the spot and do a poll of do you know your legislator, who your senator is or representative is. The vast majority of people honestly don't. If you do, you're ahead of the game. But we can help you identify who your legislator is, how to set up a meeting, what's the most appropriate format, what could you say and do in a meeting. So we're here as a resource. If you wanted a lot more information on this, online at the national website, there's a whole packet on the Seizure Safe Schools Act. But what it really boils down to is your willingness to do one of these things that is showing on the screen. Um, I keep looking for questions. So again, I just want to remind people, if you have questions, type them in and I'll get to those. Any ideas or suggestions folks listening may have that we missed, something else that we should be doing? If you want to just write that in the question box section, I'll get those and we'll add those to our list of ideas and suggestions.
Well, and I want to reiterate that we never felt like we were doing this alone. The Epilepsy Foundation, the lobbyists, Karen Lentz, and Deb McGrath. I mean, just they were always with us. I mean, every step of the way. So you're not going to be doing any of this by yourselves. I just want to, reassure people that the Epilepsy Foundation will be beside you every step of the way in this journey.
Great, great. Okay. So what are our next steps? The way the process works is, as I mentioned, we went to a legislator. Actually, it was a parent of a child living with epilepsy who did not have a good school situation. And she went and talked to Representative O'Connell. And Representative O'Connell listened intently and said, this just isn't right, and we need to do something about it. So when people do hear these stories, they do want to take action. So it is a matter of speaking up. So what are our next steps? If you're willing to do any of those things that were mentioned earlier, simply send me an email, and I can connect you with your legislator, let you know who your legislators are, the best way to contact them, and we can work hand in hand to help you get your message to your legislators. Um, Once our bill is assigned a bill number, it will then be assigned to a committee. And as I mentioned earlier, that's where our real work begins. I think Lindsay and her mom mentioned that they went to the education committee.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to set up a scenario. Let's say our bill, once it's assigned that number, it will be assigned to a committee. So right now we're in a holding pattern, waiting to see what committee it goes to. Once we know what committee it goes to, that committee will be our target audience. Um, we will, for lack of better words, want to bombard those committee members with these stories and our messages to please pass this bill. The bill then has to get out of committee. Here in Massachusetts, because they like their politics and sports so much, chances are it would go to a second committee. Um, or it could go over to a different chamber, the House or the Senate. Most often, bills like this will go to a joint committee, so we won't have to go on both sides because a joint committee is made up of both representatives and senators. But we have to get it through the process, committee by committee, before it goes to the full floor. If it's voted on at the full floor and passes, then it goes to the governor. So we have different sort of targets along the way of who we want to get our message to. It sounds like a long process, and it can seem like a long process. As Lindsay and Cindy mentioned, it took 2 years in Kentucky. But we just had great success up in Maine. We got on a different issue. Our step therapy bill was just signed by the governor last week. So it's very rewarding to do all this work, and it comes to fruition when the governor actually signs this into law.
Yes.
So our next step is sort of information gathering. Know who your legislators are, a willingness to contact them. Contact me for the specific information you may want to take, and we go from there. Any questions or suggestions from our group? Okay. Hopefully everyone can see this. My email address, simply email me, and one-on-one we can get this going. So that's it for me. Hopefully we've answered most any questions you have, or encourage you to participate. Um, I guess we'll do one last round of opportunities if people do have questions. I'll check this question box.
Hey, Bill, if anybody wants to talk to me personally or anything, please feel free to give them my email or my cell phone.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, we have another recommendation from the audience. We could also create an anthology, compile these stories, video stories. If people are willing to go public, we can put them on the website. There's many different opportunities. You can do this from home. You can meet with legislators in the district office. You can meet with them at the state capitol in Boston. I recommend, it's oftentimes easier and even maybe more effective to try to set up a meeting in their district office, because if you want to follow up, they're nearby. Um, any other questions? I'm trying to. I have something here and I can't read it, unfortunately. Video stories that we can post on YouTube and attach the letters to the legislators. Um, oh, here's a question. Did you have doctors who supported your bill?
No, we did not. We
Okay.
did not have any doctors.
Okay.
But not to say that they wouldn't.
Right. We're very fortunate. We have a very active professional advisory board made up of, I think there's over 30 people specializing in treatment of epilepsy, physicians, epileptologists, nurses, social workers, and I know it's a dedicated group, and they would fully be behind this. They've been involved with supporting a number of our other bills. Um, I'm I'm just scrolling through these questions, the videos. Okay, here's a question. Would someone who wanted to either like testify or write to their legislator or had some questions about, oh, how do I do this? Is there someone available to help them? I'm going to go back. That's what I'm here for. Please, please feel free to reach out to me. There's my email address, and I'd be more than happy. We're in the process. This is sort of one of the beginning steps. Most of you are also on our advocacy network, and we're going to be distributing and getting materials out on a regular basis now pertaining to this bill. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm just looking. Okay, that was the last of our questions. I want to thank Colleen and Cindy and Lindsay for taking the time to join us tonight and really sharing their stories. I just admire their bravery and their commitment to this issue, and everyone else who joined us today. I'll be in touch. Any
Okay.
last questions? Okay.
Best of luck, and I'm so excited for Massachusetts. Yay!
Okay. Well, we'll be keeping you posted.
Okay, it sounds good. Hey, if y'all need anything, you know where to find me.
Okay, thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.